Greetings, fellow snowflakes. I'm an old school liberal. Many in my generation were opposed to mean conservative forces that wished to uphold vaguely Christian values with regards to gender and sexuality, and we were committed to ending sexism, racism, homophobia and ableism in society. This was important work, and we were a liberal-minded generation who believed in diversity, freedom and equality. Something happened to the side that I thought I was on, something that has caused me some concern for years now. And although I have been known on this channel as perhaps something of a social justice type, I have also voiced these concerns from time to time. There is no excuse for being rude and dismissive of those who differ from you, or the very real need to critique and examine those aspects of intolerance and oppression that still exist. But I think it's only fair to criticise those aspects of so-called social justice that do bother and concern me. So let's go. First up, let's admit that the blame for the current backlash against tolerance is partly the fault of those who have taken the tasks of increasing awareness and representation, promoting fairness and equality, and ending stigma and stereotyping, and added a hefty dose of hypocrisy and stupidity on it. Let's also admit that things are a lot better in the West than they used to be, and often, not always, better than they are in other parts of the world. A lot of progress has been made in our society. In the UK at least, overt racism and even some more subtle forms of racism are completely unacceptable, and generally speaking we are committed to treating people of different races and nationalities with fairness and equality. I'm not saying there's no work to be done, whether with regards to our subconscious attitudes or oversights in terms of unequal treatment, but our society is a lot less racist than it was when I was growing up. And, a few idiots aside, mostly the problems that persist are accidental rather than deliberate. Don't hate on white people, we're trying our best. And generally speaking, women are a lot more independent, valued and respected than they were. Most of the issues to be fought in terms of sexism are to do with roles and stereotypes rather than actual rights or oppression. Again, I'm not saying there's no work to do, and attitudes play a huge part here. There are still men who have sexist attitudes towards women, sometimes violent, aggressive and predatory attitudes. I'm not going to deny that those things exist, and I care deeply about the plight of women, how unsafe they feel around men sometimes, and the condescending, mocking attitudes some men have towards them. But society is a lot more equal than it was, and women have more opportunities for successful careers and even positions of power and authority, all of which I support wholeheartedly. We are making society a lot more inclusive of those with disabilities and mental health conditions, creating ways for people with disabilities or mental health conditions to function in society and have real opportunities and independence. There's still work to be done, for sure, but aside from a few idiots, society as a whole has the right attitude towards these matters now. And although it's far from ideal, we are a lot more accepting of gays and lesbians these days, and we're even getting there with regards to trans women and trans men. There are still groups who are horrendously discriminated against and where the media representation and public awareness is sorely lacking. Trans women and trans men fall into this category. But it is also true with regards to bisexuality, non-binary gender identities, BDSM and polyamory. There are areas where there are real issues regarding rights and oppression. There's still work to be done. But let's face it, Europe and America in the 21st century is as good as it's ever been for many minority groups. A couple of general points. When critiquing artistic expression, remember to look at the many different layers of meaning, not just the surface level of interpretation and your simplistic, moralistic arguments about that. I'd like to look at the League of Gentlemen character Barbara as an example. Possibly this could be seen as an offensive stereotype about transgender people, and that the laughs are all about mocking transgender people. But looked at another way, she represents the way many of us feel when we don't pass too well, and a valuable opportunity for those who are transgender to laugh at ourselves and our plight. Laughter can be healing. Also, of course, she fits into the general League of Gentlemen tendency towards absurdist humour, and placed beside the other, much more grotesque and bizarre characters in the show, she is actually a very lovable, sympathetic character. And besides, who says that a trans woman has to live up to the conventional standards of femininity and beauty anyway? The point is that there are many different layers and interpretations to types of artistic expression. Don't be stupid and shallow in your analysis. As for language, it is important to remind people that it is morally objectionable to be rude, insulting and intolerant in the things that you say. But let's focus on things that are generally and intentionally offensive. There is far too much attention paid towards critiquing and analysing all the ways we use language that literally no one finds offensive anymore. Yes, it can be interesting as an intellectual exercise to note how certain phrases and words originate in a problematic and more intolerant past, but if no one actually takes words like stupid as ableist, or sold down the river as racist, then what exactly is the problem with these weird quirks of language? And language is expressive. It often contains metaphors. Is saying someone is blind to something really ableist? Surely it just means that you can't see the thing. Like how you might say someone is in the dark about something. Let's stop being nitpicking and ridiculous about these things. Art and language are supposed to be about expressing and communicating. We need to be really careful about putting restrictions around those things. Can we go back to dealing with racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia and ableism separately? They are all very different and need to be dealt with in different ways. Intersectionality was supposed to be a reform within feminism to challenge the previously white-centric, cis-centric and at times heterocentric tendencies of the movement. But it crossed a line when it started to be about feminism sticking its nose in where it's not wanted and conflating and confusing totally separate issues. Let's stop with the oppression Olympics and weighing up of privileges against each other, counting up oppression and privilege points like numbers on a calculator or beads on an abacus. Unfair disadvantages exist, stigma and stereotyping exist, sometimes outright oppression exists, but let's deal with each of these issues on their own terms and stop trying to make them equivalent to each other. Race does not equal gender, sexuality does not equal disability, etc., etc. Can we also admit that while non-binary identities are valid, the gender pretty much breaks down to being a man, a woman, in between, neither, both or fluid? That's not so many gender categories in the end. Why the need for all this endless complexity around the issue? It starts to seem like navel-gazing nonsense or some kind of trivial game. Use language creatively by all means, but how many gender identities are there, practically speaking? I'm pretty sure you can count them on 2 hands when you stop hair-splitting and overcomplicating. Oh, and stop confusing gender expression, how you dress, behave, roles, interests, etc., with gender identity. They are not the same. You play into the hands of TERFs when you do that, because they also confuse the two as a way for them to erase the validity of transgender people. I'm going to do another video with regards to my new understanding of gender, so stay tuned for that one. But while we're talking about transgender, there's something else I want to tackle. Can we stop shaming people for their sexual tastes? I don't know why attraction to the outward signifiers of gender is made out to be more valid as part of someone's sexual desire than sexual needs and desires related to sexual anatomy. It's just as shallow when you think about it. And that's the thing, sex is primal and instinctive, and when it comes to initial desire and attraction, it is often based on seemingly shallow matters such as how someone looks, the little quirks about their behaviour or the way they speak, or stereotyped fantasy roles you might find exciting. That's the nature of the beast, I'm afraid. Liking a kind of sex that can only happen when someone has a certain kind of anatomy is just another one of those factors, as is the desire and arousal about certain body parts. It's primal and instinctive. It's not like someone can help it if they're really into cock and not into pussy, or vice versa. This tendency to insist that people should love the person instead of these outward characteristics is really naive, sort of prudish, and vaguely quasi-religious, to be honest. Let's grow up and admit that sexuality is the base primal instinct it is, Yes, you should always be respectful of the people you interact with, including their gender identity. Yes, a deeper level of love for the person can be involved when you get to know them better. But people can't help the sexual orientations and tastes that they have, and it's just as intolerant to insist that they should as it is to dismiss someone as not a real woman because they are trans, or that it is gay for a man to date a trans woman. Two wrongs don't make a right. Let's all be tolerant of the complexity of human nature here. I'm trans myself. I understand how important it is to be recognised and respected as the gender that fits with who you are inside. I understand how infuriating and heartbreaking it can be when people insist you are the gender of your birth sex, really, or use language that suggests this. I know how sad and lonely it can be when you're trans, how you feel no one will love you for you. I get it. But there are people who can love us and respect us too. But you need to be open to it. Sometimes I'm exasperated by the way my transgender sisters, brothers and siblings complain when people won't date us because we are trans, but then also complain that people are fetishizing us when they like us precisely because we are trans. There's no pleasing you, is there? Look, I get it, but it's like this. People can't help their preferences for certain genitals. Sex is primal. There are plenty of people who don't mind what you've got in your pants or will positively enjoy it, so don't worry. It's only really transphobic when they talk about you as if you're not a real woman, or say that it means that a man is gay if he sleeps with a trans woman. That's transphobic because it's saying that trans women aren't really women. But anything short of that is just people having their own sexual preferences, and that's not something they can help either, so we need to be tolerant of that too. Also, if someone is really only seeing you as what you are instead of who you are, then yes, they are fetishizing. But if someone just happens to like penis but also likes women, then that's fine, enjoy it. Don't put obstacles in your way by being naive and prudish about it. Hey, if someone's into me precisely because I am the way that I am, then that's great. Sex is primal, instinctive, naughty even. If you can have fun and they can have fun, then great. That's what sex is all about. It can always become deeper and more emotional later. And of course, if someone is not respecting you as a person, then ditch them. But if everyone's happy and enjoying each other, then what's the problem? You want to jeopardize your own happiness for the sake of a political point? That's really sad. Personally, I don't care if someone is fetishizing or objectifying me when it comes to sex alone. That's kind of inevitable given what sex is. When it comes down to love and relationships, then I need them to see me as a person. And the second thing can grow out of the first after all. So do yourself a favour and stop making such a big deal out of this. Finally, let's talk about feminism. There are two issues involved when it comes to matters of gender. One is to do with rights and oppression. With regards to tackling that, feminism made sense. The world did treat women as lesser than men, and feminism fought for women's rights, and rightfully so. Where there are still inequalities involved, then feminism still has a purpose. But the other issue is to do with roles and stereotypes. This is where gender hurts men just as much as it hurts women. And this is the great failing of feminism, in my opinion. It still tries to tackle those issues in a one-sided kind of way, barely addressing the ways in which gender hurts men too, except as an attempt to combat criticism of the feminist movement. Let's tackle the unfair stereotyping and forcing of people into roles that affects people of all genders. Let's do it together. And let's stop being so divisive about it. A transgender person knows the pain and agony of that stuff more than anyone. Non-conforming people also know that pain, but it potentially affects everyone. So let's all work towards a less stereotyped and rigid notion of gender for the benefit of all. That's all. Thanks for watching. We're all different, we're all special. Snowflakes unite.